You're watching a show called Mister Peepers. Yes, you heard right, Mister Peepers. It was an American sitcom that aired on NBC from July 3rd, 1952 to June 12th, 1955. It was a simple 1950s comedy. Could you imagine having a TV show called Mister Peepers these days? I guess it would be pretty dark. Anyway, the star of the show was Wally Cox, who starred as Robinson J. Peepers, a Jefferson City junior high school science teacher. I have to admit it, Wally Cox looks like a Mister Peepers. Actually, I shouldn't say that since Wally had to deal with that most of his adult life. Starting in 1968, there was an NBC game show called The Hollywood Squares. Hosted by Peter Marshall, the show was a takeoff on tic-tac-toe. Some of the celebrity regulars were folks like Charlie Weaver, George Gobel, and Paul Lynde. As a child, I only knew these people from the game show. I had no idea why they were considered celebrities. One of these was Wally Cox. To me, he was just that little guy who sat in the upper left corner of the game. And he also voiced the animated cartoon character Underdog. Both were very popular when I was growing up. Now I'm an old man and I realized I don't know anything about this dude, especially his alleged close relationship with Marlon Brando. To this day, their close relationship is filled with rumors. Allegedly, Brando once told a journalist, "If Wally had been a woman, I would have married him, and we would have lived happily ever after." It turns out this reluctant star had an exceptionally remarkable life with many ups and downs. So now I'm going to find out just who this man was. Wallace Maynard Cox was born on December 6, 1924 in Detroit, Michigan. His parents were George and Frances Eleanor Cox. His mother was a mystery writer who wrote under the name Eleanor Blake. When his parents were divorced, Wally lived with his mother and younger sister, Eleanor, and the three of them moved to Evanston, Illinois. It was in Evanston that he met another young boy named Marlon Brando. Marlon was kind of a rough little boy, said Eleanor Robinson, Cox's sister. He tied Wally to a tree one afternoon and left him. I'm surprised they remained friends, but they did. Marlon was fascinated by how funny Wally was, and I'm sure Wally was fascinated by how handsome Marlon was. They envied each other for what each didn't have. The same thing amused them. There was always much laughter when they were together, and they had similar attitudes towards fame and publicity. They were among the first generation of actors who fled from the press and hid from the public. They were both intellectuals and extremely intelligent, and had lofty conversations on unusual subjects. They were birds of a feather. As a small child, he suffered from horrible eyesight. Since he was already being picked on, he refused to get glasses. He thought it would make matters worse. He would cheat on his eye test. He would memorize the letters as the other children took the test, and then repeat them when he took the test. His family rarely stayed in one place for very long, constantly moving from town to town. "I was the new kid 9 times, he said, and if that weren't enough, I was articulate, always the smallest one in class, and nearsighted. I was the smallest kid in class, he said, and I had a high-pitched voice, good diction, and good marks, and the teachers liked me. I was the perfect subject for getting beaten up, so I contrived a method whereby I could give the correct answers and make kids laugh without at the same time offending the teacher. I had to dance between eggs." He did his best not to talk to the other kids, even to tell them the time. "I'd wear my wristwatch upside down," Wally reports. "When someone asks me the time, I'd simply raise my arm to my chest and let them see for themselves. When they inquire why I wore it that way, I'd say, I have no trouble at all reading it upside down." In Peter Marshall's book, Backstage with the Original Hollywood Squares, Peter wrote, "Wally grew up a tormented child, a product of a broken home. His father was a military man and somewhat of a tyrant when it came to raising his son. After the divorce of Wally's parents, he was raised by his mother, the mystery writer Eleanor Blake, who had entered into a lesbian relationship long before it was considered an alternative lifestyle. While he was happier with his new set of non-traditional parents than he had ever been with his natural father, this unusual living arrangement left Wally with some psychological issues that kept him on the couch for his entire life. I guess I've always been a comedian, really. As a kid, I always depended on laughter to get me out of trouble. I considered myself weak. I fell easily into the old cliche that anyone who speaks good English is not good in combat. My parents and I moved to New York City when I was 12 years old, Cox said. When I got into Manhattan, I suddenly got a great curiosity about flora, fauna, and wildlife. In Michigan, I had the best place in the world to study such things in the natural state, but I waited until I got within a hop, skip, and a jump of Broadway before I got interested. I thought I would major in biology at the City College of New York, and just as I got there, the Army grabbed me. He was taken into the Army, he said, because the government had an oversupply of size 36 uniforms. But his time in the Army was short, about 4 months. He said he was discharged from the Army for repeated sunstroke. When I got out of the Army in '43, I left Fort Worth, near where I had been stationed, and hit for New York. There I took an aptitude test and they told me, "You have no creative ability, but try craft work or music." Cost me $20. Wally's story really starts after the Army when he was living in New York. At the time, he was attending New York University, where he enrolled in a GI Industrial Arts course. One day on campus, he ran into a silversmith, and that led to a part-time job at his shop. "I went to school on the GI Bill and studied jewelry making," Wally continued. "I hated it, but the man said I'd like it. After I graduated, I opened a small shop in New York and got a small business in cufflinks and tie clasps started. But my bookkeeping got mixed up. I'd forget what I owed or what was owed me. Spent all my time writing material." Tony Randall, his future co-star on Mister Peepers, said, "I was up at Maureen Stapleton's apartment. I knew everybody except a silversmith that Marlon Brando had an apartment with. The silversmith made wonderful jewelry which he took around to shops and sold. He was represented in the best stores. He got up and did a comedy routine about an army sergeant. He was so good they made him audition for Barney Josephson's Cafe Society downtown. They put him in one night and the next morning he was a star. They all decided I was naturally ridiculous," Cox once said, "so I decided to turn it into gainful employment. One night I was doing some parlor racks at a party one of my haberdasher customers was giving," Cox said. "Marlon Brando the actor was there and he got me booked into the Village Vanguard, a nightclub. And then I was booked into the Blue Angel, and it was there that Dwight Deere Wyman signed me for Dance Me a Song."
We used to have friend Dufo. What a crazy guy. Always makes us laugh. You know, when you're a kid, you do anything for a dare. You hang over the edge of a roof on a board for a dare. Well, we seen these guys just try and get Dufo to hang over the edge of a roof on a board. And we seen a board. It was a little thin board. And we told him it wouldn't hold you, you know. So he's going to do it anyway. What a crazy guy.
One of his more popular bits was his strange yodeling.
Oh, there's a tavern in the town, and there my true love sits him down, and he drinks his wine as merry as can be, and never thinks of me.
Wally Cox, 24-year-old who designs costume jewelry, has been painting word portraits of typical neighborhood characters at parties for several years. Max attended one of these performances at a village soiree recently and enjoyed it well enough to insist the young man try his humor out on the sophisticated customers at the Vanguard. Net result, a new discovery and a new career. Wally Cox, the youthful and so different comic at the Blue Angel, works in the daytime as a silversmith of all things. Marlon Brando, who left for Europe this week, sold his beloved motorcycle to comedian Wally Cox, who rode to a Detroit engagement on it. Critics compare Wally Cox with Fields, Will Rogers. Wally Cox is a comedian who has quietly quipped his way into fame. Critics have compared him with W.C. Fields and Will Rogers, also Robert Benchley, since he walked into town a few nights ago as a guy with a grin to captivate an audience with the opening of the review Dance Me a Song. Now, while Dance Me a Song wasn't a huge hit, Wally Cox was consistently singled out as the best part of the show. Wally Cox, the comedian sensation of that Broadway show Dance Me a Song, will be featured at the Rockland County Music Costume Party Gallery Gaieties on Friday evening. Wally Gibbs in The New Yorker called Mr. Cox the Comedian of the Year. In an interview Tony Randall did on the Foundation Interviews YouTube channel, he said, "Everyone said to him, you should become a performer, but he didn't want to do it. And he was right. He shouldn't have become a performer. He was brilliant, but he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy in the business of being an actor. He was happy when he was a silversmith, and it wrecked his life. He was an instant success. He submitted to the pressure of Marlon and others, but I think principally Marlon, who got him a job at a nightclub doing these same monologues, and the next day he was a star." It isn't likely you've ever heard of a fellow called Wally Cox, who's just a young man with a nice face. I've never heard of him, but he had me weeping with laughter last evening. He didn't do anything, he just talked in 2 sketches. In one, he talked about a neighborhood character named Dufo in a clever sketch burlesquing the documentary movie. In the other, he was just a soda fountain dispenser chatting about his boss, his customers, and things in general. Mr. Cox is a bright, brand new comedian. Dance Me a Song closes Saturday, and with it goes Wally Cox, a nutty young man who walks off with the notices for his funny behaviors in 2 monologues of his own authorship. He'll be around though, working in clubs. He's at the Persian Room now, considering the many offers that have come to him since Dance Me a Song opened recently, and making up his mind whether or not to quit show business. A successful silversmith, Cox has been in show business for only a year, and he's not crazy about it. He wants to be a writer. He'll probably make a good one too, for the outstanding feature of his own material, which he composes himself, is the remarkable authentic speech of the various characters he impersonates. He says the first good day that comes along, he'd like to go out with a scientific expedition picking flowers. He's very interested in plant life. As a matter of fact, a rousing discussion about the superior instincts of plants over insects is one of his nightclub bits. By April of 1950, Wally began appearing on TV and radio, as well as continuing to appear on the stage. John C. Wilson and Oliver Smith have signed Wally Cox and Phoebe Foster for roles in support of Ruth Gordon and Jane Bowell's new play In the Summer House. Bonus Day Brightener, Wally Cox, one of the funniest people breathing, will be tonight's guest host on Broadway Open House. And by the end of 1950, he had written a play. Comedian Wally Cox has written a play, Violets Are Blue, and producer Dwight Deere Wyman has taken an option on it. Unfortunately, Dwight Deere Wyman died on January 20th, 1951, and Wally's play went unproduced.
How'd you like another transfusion, Mac? Hey, how's that new book of yours coming along? My agent tells me he's going to knock them for a loop.
Well, I don't think we better wait any longer. I think the others have been delayed.
Great idea, Ransom. Great idea. Sedgwick accused the monitor. That's a great idea. Now, how do you get out of it?
Huh? Hey, go on, old boy. You can't stop there. What does Sedgwick do?
How do you get out of it, Anderson? Tell us the solution.
Marlon Brando has reformed since Wally Cox moved into his 57th Street apartment. He's given up his mambo records, his bongo drumming, and his tom-tom concerts so Wally can wind up the last act of his play he's writing. Marlon now reads or does some quiet handstands, and the flat is as hushed as a mausoleum. And while he continued to make waves in the entertainment industry, he met a special lady. Wally Cox, the elfin comedian, has giant-sized feelings about Marilyn Gennaro, who dances in The King and I. Wally Cox, who bought Marlon Brando's motorcycle some time ago and has been zooming around in it ever since, has sold the 2-wheeled whizzer at the insistence of his fiancée, Marilyn Gennaro. She fears Wally will get smashed up, so now he's driving a nice, safe, horseless carriage. Life was great for Wally. He signed a lucrative contract with a television network. Wally Cox, the Blue Angel comic, has ironed out details of a 5-month contract with NBC. And this led to his own TV show. Wally Cox, the shy humorist who's been under contract to NBC since mid-February, is being prepared for a summer TV series, a situation comedy with a high school background. Coming up, Wally Cox the comedian has been signed as a summer replacement attraction by NBC TV. He'll be seen in a situation comedy titled Peepers. Details will be announced later. Wally Cox hailed as comedian in high school show Mister Peepers. As far as I'm concerned, Wally Cox doesn't have to do anything but appear on camera to start me laughing. But as Robinson Peepers, a science teacher who possesses every ridiculous trait of the traditional absent-minded professor, Wally completely destroys me. Now back in the 1950s, when shows were done live, there were no repeats for the summer. Instead of reruns, another show would take its place temporarily until the original series came back in the fall. Mr. Peepers was just a summer replacement show, and at the end of the summer, it was taken off the air. Mr. Peepers was put on by an automobile sponsor as a summer replacement strictly on a temporary basis, and accordingly, it was dropped when the regular show returned on the air. Within 3 weeks, NBC had 15,000 letters demanding that Mr. Peepers, as personified by Wally Cox, be returned to the air. At the end of the 3 weeks, Wally, as the shy, funny little schoolteacher, was back on the network with a new sponsor. When Mr. Peepers came back as a regular series, a friend from Wally's pre-fame days was hired to play another teacher. It was Tony Randall's big break.
Yes, I followed the instructions right to the letter. These should be perfect.
Oh, yes. I had a friend back home that took pictures of his son every year on his son's birthday. He took them right next to the birthday cake so you could tell how old he was.
Clever.
He wanted to have pictures of his son growing up. So what they did was, on his first birthday, they put 1 candle on the birthday cake, and his second birthday, they put 2 candles on the birthday cake. And his 5th birthday, they put birthday candles on the cake, and so on. But after his 28th birthday, then they stopped taking pictures.
Oh, why?
The house burned down.
Wally Cox, Mr. Peepers on TV, is Marlon Brando's roommate in private life. But he goes Marlon one better. He makes his own shoes. And at the same time, Wally began recording his stage monologues for vinyl and began putting his newfound wealth to use. One of the more recent additions to the list of landowners in Michigan is a young gentleman by the name of Wallace Maynard Cox. In fact, Mr. Cox just bought a farm, a 306-acre farm not far from Detroit. But there was another side to Wally, an insecure one, and for that he felt he needed help. Wally Cox used to be a successful silversmith and now a successful Mr. Peepers attributes much of his success to a psychiatrist who has been treating him for 6 years. The Hollywood gossip columnist Erskine Johnson had this to say about Wally. "Maybe I'm headed for a psychiatrist's couch," writes Erskine, "but I have the strange theory that Wally Cox was not born of flesh and blood." Wally, Erskine believes, was doodled on a napkin as a cartoon character by Walt Disney, and then, by some electronic miracle, he turned up as a human to become the ever-popular Mister Peepers. Droll and elfish, Wally looks, acts, talks, and walks like something out of a Disney fantasy. Where Wally ends and Mr. Peepers begins is indefinable.
I didn't hear you.
Are you a performer?
Yeah.
Are you an actor of any sort?
Yeah.
Do you ever act in motion pictures?
No, I've never done that.
1 down and 9 to go, Mr. Allen.
Sadly, the success of Mr. Peepers was short. By the second season, its ratings were dropping. Despite the big success of Mr. Peepers, the word around TV Row is that Wally Cox's sponsors are shopping around for a replacement. So, in an effort to increase ratings, at the end of that season, Mr. Peepers got married. And then, in the summer, Wally got married for real. For one thing, Cox made both engagement and wedding rings for his real bride on his hobby workbench at home. A young man of many interests, He is genuinely shy and genuinely kind and considerate, and in some respects genuinely eccentric. He's extremely funny offstage. He never took an acting lesson in his life. He wants to be a writer. He loves to ride his motorcycles and bicycles and has soloed in a plane, likes boating, and is a card-carrying member of the American Museum of Natural History. Like Mr. Peepers, the junior high school science teacher, Cox is a scientist of such fervor that he can go on a nature walk and spend an hour traveling 10 feet. He's an avid bird watcher, wildflower hunter, and rock studier. He once told this writer in an interview that he was doing some fantastic reading in the study of the psychology of the water shrew. And even by this point, the public was having trouble separating Wally from the character he played on TV. He often took parts in other TV shows in an effort to show he was more than Mr. Peepers. Wally Cox as the shy Mr. Peepers gives the impression of being none too husky, but anyone who tries to push him around might come in for a surprise. Tony Randall, Wally's friend off-screen as well as his pal Harvey Wiskett on the show, reports that Cox is quite an athlete with a physique that would make most men envious and keeps himself in top condition. A book titled Mister Peepers by Wally Cox hits the bookstalls in April with the subtag A Sort of Novel. Mr. Peepers' days are numbered. The sponsor is dropping the Wally Cox stanza in June. Cox will attempt to work out a different show format and develop new characterizations. One possibility is that NBC may convert Peepers into a 5-a-week daytime series for summer viewing. So during Mr. Peepers' third season, they tried all types of gimmicks to increase ratings, including Peepers traveling to England. And then there were special guest stars. Elaine Stritch, Broadway stage actor, joins Wally Cox, star of NBC's Mr. Peepers, as the program introduces a policy of guest celebrities on each of the remaining Sunday shows for the season. And finally, a very strange episode. Mr. Peepers will do the life of Wally Cox on KRON TV at 7:30. This is quite a gimmick and should be interesting. But nothing helped. One reader writes, the dropping of Wally Cox's Mr. Peepers is called the worst atrocity since the murder of Abel by one of my readers, Robert Wilson of Brooklyn. Since Mr. Peepers, the mild-mannered high school teacher, faded from NBC a couple weeks ago for reasons utterly mysterious to his fans, does Cox mind being still identified as Peepers? After Peepers, Wally was signed to play at the Dunes Hotel in Las Vegas. Reportedly, Wally didn't prepare as he thought he would rely on the material that went over so well in New York. Mr. Peepers fired, TV comedian flops in Las Vegas show. The management said Wally Cox laid an egg and he admitted they were displeased. Thus, the Dunes Hotel and television's Mr. Peepers came to a professional parting of the ways after 3 performances of a scheduled 4-week floor engagement. The hotel said it will announce a replacement today. The comedian showed up for Friday night's show, though hotel officials previously told him his $44,000 appearance was canceled. They shooed him away. "They wouldn't let me go on," he said. He was fired after 3 shows of what was to be a 2-night, 4-week appearance at $11,000 a week. Al Gottesman, hotel vice president and entertainment chief, said Cox flopped. A hotel official said that negotiations are underway to buy up the comedian's contract. But a week later, he was given a second chance, and then was fired again. Exclusively yours! Wally Cox left Las Vegas in a huff, and he's still in it. Faded out of $11,000 a week as a Vegas nightclub comic, Mr. Peepers spills the inside on who asked him to leave gracefully in a signed article just published in magazine Las Vegas. Writes Wally, "They offered to drive me away from the club in an ambulance, saying I had a high fever. If that's gracefulness, I intend never to experience it." Annette Wally Cox's experience in Las Vegas, way I heard it, when they wanted him to rehearse, he was in the desert chasing butterflies and looking for colored rocks. Overexposure problem. Overexposure is the constant worry of the TV artist. It caught up with Wally Cox, who starred as Mister Peepers from July 1952 to June 1955. Cox takes it rather philosophically. He lives in an East End apartment and busies himself making furniture, jewelry, and lamps. He took a turn in a Las Vegas nightclub last year and flopped. What do I think about the draining powers of TV? Well, I'm not supposed to tell you, I think. You see, I've still got 5.5 years to go on my NBC contract, but certainly it gives one pause, doesn't it? Nice work if you can get it. Wally Cox, once employed as Mister Peepers, is still drawing $12,000 a week from NBC for doing nothing. Cox has 3 more years to go on his contract with the network. There's a splendid fall program idea cooking up at NBC TV for Wally Cox to play Hiram Holliday in an adventure series based on Paul Gallagher's dashing magazine yarns. Wally Cox, who looks like a kindly Cocker Spaniel in real life, will return on Real Life to TV next fall as a combination of Frank Merriweather, Douglas Fairbanks, and Superman. "The idea is really quite interesting," said Cox as he sunned himself on a beach in Central Park here. "Is for me to play a man who can do everything extremely well but still looks like an unprepossessing person when I'm not practicing my talents." And at first the show got some good reviews, but there was a problem. I agree with you that Wally Cox is most amusing in his Hiram Holliday show, but does he have to be on the same time as Disneyland? This is HBD.
The Adventures of Hiram Holliday.
Who is it?
You.
I believe it's time for my nightly constitutional.
We have not much time, Mr. Neal.
That's reassuring.
That is also what the hand tells. The line of life. It comes to a sudden end.
You must be wrong. I've got a grandfather who's 86.
Mr. Neal, allez!
You are no gypsy. Where did you learn to handle the blades?
At the Brooklyn Heights YMCA.
Do you kiss with your glasses on or off?
Oh, I trust that's a purely academic question.
Observation. Wally Cox's comedy series, Adventures of Hiram Holliday, NBC TV, Wednesdays 8 p.m., is one of the major disappointments of the season. Here's another instance where characterization has been sacrificed to a contrived plot with disastrous results. Perhaps if we all wrote 10 letters apiece, we could persuade NBC to bring back Mister Peepers and take away, by euthanasia or any other means, the current Wally Cox series, Hiram Holliday. The sponsor has notified NBC that he intends shelving Wally Cox's Hiram Holliday unless a better time slot is available. I don't want to get interested in the ratings and reviews of TV shows. It would only cause me to have emotional experiences which I can do without. After all, I'm just a visitor on this planet, and I want to enjoy it as much as I can, says the philosophical Wally. Wally Cox is losing another show. His Adventures of Hiram Holliday ends March 13th. Why should I be unhappy? Cox says with a casual air. My experiences in television were things to be expected. It's the nature of the business. I understood that before I went into television, that it would be that way, and it turned out I was right. This offers a better living than most other businesses, he remarks. Even though I've gone through 2 formats, I can still work fairly consistently as a TV guest. I'm doing the Craft Theater next Wednesday, then the Steve Allen Show on June 9th. I've been working right along, and I really haven't spent any time brooding over the demise of my last show. I decided long ago that what I want is to enjoy life and have peace of mind. All other considerations are secondary, including television. Frank Sinatra is using Wally Cox in one of his upcoming dramatic half hours for ABC TV, The Green Grass of St. Teresa. And for the next couple of years, Wally continued to appear in television in many different programs. In early 1955, a strange incident happened. Note carries threat to kidnap Wally Cox. Wally Cox family received extortion threat. Wally Cox, television comedian, his wife and 2 children have been threatened with kidnapping unless he pays $1,500. The threat was contained in a note delivered in a restaurant yesterday to his manager, Gloria Saphir. 2 young men handed the note to a head check girl who gave it to Miss Saphir. The men left the restaurant without being detected. Miss Saphir said she received 3 threatening phone calls after getting the note. "Have you got the money yet?" a voice demanded. She says that in one call, she was told to take the money to a bar in Idlewood Airport, and in another was told to take it to a locker in Grand Central Terminal. A third call said she had 2 more hours. Cox is reportedly unruffed by the threats. He is staying in his New York apartment. The police say his wife and children are in Cox's country home, the location of which was not disclosed. I don't know whatever became of this, but I assume Wally and his family were never kidnapped. And as Wally entered the 1960s, he was still paid weekly on his NBC contract. Comedian Wally Cox collects $50,000 per year on contract. "It's nice," he said simply, "the money I mean. I don't expect to sign another wonderful contract like this one for the rest of my life," he went on modestly. "The TV industry is very childish. They pay tremendous prices when you're hot, whatever that is, without considering whether you've improved much as a performer. My original contract with NBC for 5 years was canceled after Peepers started rolling. They signed me to a new one at $50,000 a year, dropping their yearly options, and made it run for 7 years. It was their idea, and I must say I like it very much." "I have an 8-year contract with NBC," the bi-speckled Cox explained, "but they don't know what to do with me. I've been riding the gravy train for years, but it pulls into the roundhouse next September, and I'll be unemployed." But Cox continued to earn his pay, appearing constantly on television.
All right. Attention, everybody. I have something important to tell you. Starting today, we will apply all the things we've been learning to help Major Adams in his tasks. We are social beings, and as such, we will join in the joint social effort to help the wagon train.
We need money.
Well, that's right down my alley. What are you doing to alleviate the situation? I beg your pardon? What are you doing to try to raise the money?
Well, some of the fellows are thinking about renting out one of the rooms.
Oh, is it a nice room? Oh, sure. Private bath and everything. Well, this may be a stroke of luck. I've been looking for a place near the campus. You have?
Sometime in 1961, Wally got divorced from Madeline. It must have been done quietly, as I could find no mention of it anywhere. And then Wally wrote a book called My Life as a Small Boy. Wally Cox's book fails even after Parr's show plug. Could I claim a prize as the only man who ever plugged a book on the Jack Parr Show that didn't immediately become a bestseller? Even now I go into bookstores, where it is over on display, and ask if I might see a copy of Wally Cox's My Life as a Small Boy. Clerks smile tolerantly at me. They think I must be joking. I really did write a book, you know, and it was published. I know this because I know people who've read it, friends of mine. Still, the book is probably one of the best-kept secrets in America. In 1962, Wally landed a role in a film with Marilyn Monroe called Something's Gotta Give. Due to Marilyn's personal issues and then, sadly, her death, the film was never completed, but some of the footage is available.
Go ahead, ask.
See, what kind kind of an island was it?
I'd say it was an ordinary island, wouldn't you say?
Like the rest.
Small island?
No, not small. Not large.
Medium.
There was always talk of another series for Wally, but it never happened. He began doing a lot of commercials.
Hello, old fellow there. How would you like a good swift kick? That's what you get with new Sport Cola.
Sport Cola provides you with a refreshing flavor kick, but does it a different way.
The flavor kick without the caffeine bit. Try new Sport Cola today.
If you bleach all the time, could be you're not getting enough cleaning power from your detergent. But Procter & Gamble's new Salvo gets clothes lots cleaner looking with lots less bleaching.
I was reluctant to do them at first, he says. I always thought doing commercials was a good way to ruin a career, but that all changed now. Everybody's doing them. He continued to work on both TV and film.
I want you all to know you've made my dream come true. I've proved what a great cop I would have been.
I'll be down the hall, son.
Agnes, tell me who. Agnes, who? Who is it? Who?
In 1964, he began playing the voice of the shoeshine boy and superhero, Underdog.
Here.
Oh, Underdog, you're so weak you can't even break our chains.
The secret compartment of my ring I fill with an Underdog super energy pill.
Of course. Here it is.
Oh.
Occasionally, stories of his relationship with Marlon Brando appeared, like when they both starred in the film Morituri. Wally Cox has only trouble with Brando. When little Wally Cox and little Marlon Brando were kids back in Evanston, Illinois, there was a nasty business that Wally well remembers. The Brando-led gang captured Wally and tied him to a tree and left him. It was hours before he was released. Now in Morituri, the first time they've worked together incidentally, although they did room together for a while, Brando shoots Cox right in the center of the head. You have to say one thing about my relationship with Marlon, sighs Wally. It's consistent. Sometime in 1966, Wally got divorced from his second wife. Asked if he wanted to be in another series, Cox replied, "They're too much work. The only bad health I've ever had in my life was when I did my last series. A series is a jail sentence with pay. If you ever see me doing a series again, you'll know I'm starving," Cox said. A new game show called The Hollywood Squares began on October 17, 1966. It was hosted by Peter Marshall, a longtime friend of Cox, and for the next 5 years, Cox sat in the upper left-hand corner.
True or false, my friend? While a healthy dog's nose should feel cool to the touch, a healthy cat's nose should be warm.
In their chosen roles as more or less opposites in this world of ours. That is true.
He said it's true.
I'll agree.
No, it's false.
And that's pretty much where our story ends. Cox, for the rest of his life, continued to appear in film and TV.
We all have problems, huh? But, Mr. Kite, these are extremely serious problems. They lied to me. I had to take it. I had to take it. Who cares what your name is or where you came from? Stay there or I'll shoot.
You're making a mistake, sir. I'm a friend.
You are an invader and an enemy. That's what you are.
No, sir. Our spaceship was damaged and we had to...
Silence! Don't waste my time with any of your lies. Here. Now you stay on your side. Get over here. You stay on your side and I'll stay on my side. And don't you worry about me being here too long neither, because after Friday I'm going to be moving into the mayor's office.
In 1968, Wally starred in his own ABC TV special called What Gap? I play a middle-aged guy who is shown what the current scene is all about by a young girl, Ann Prentice, sister of Paula Prentice. The role is easy for me because I'm a middle-aged guy. He's 43. What Gap is a comedy special starring Wally Cox as a 40-year-old puffer trying to prove his ability at the likes of scuba diving and skydiving. Sadly, the show didn't go over too well. I happen to have a theory that says actors are children while directors and producers are the adults of showbiz, says Wally. The actors never leave the nest. He always does what he's told, always the child.
I guess I use you because you're so willing.
That's a rotten thing to be willing. Sorry.
Oh, Pete, no, willing's groovy. You're a saint.
I am not a saint.
Well, you know what I mean.
Busy little town, all right. Station isn't open yet.
What I care.
The weekly train gets in at 7:15, you know.
So let it.
Quite so, quite so.
Wally, do you know how to keep an elephant from charging?
No, I don't think so.
Take away his credit card.
Take away his credit card. It's time to wake up, Mr. Freeloader. Mr. Freeloader?
Hello. This is Dr. Carmichael. Yes. The police were just here.
Everyone thinks of me as a bookworm, but I have another side, the inside. I'm clad in a Grape Fizz t-shirt and French blue hip briefs. I have jockey underwear in almost every style and color.
Sir Harry was true to his word, and 2 months later he returned with a new princess. Distinct resemblance between this current series of strangulations and another series in the year 1951. I don't know, was it 52?
Yeah, similar.
Oh, extremely similar.
Now, one reason I'm stopping at this point is that Wally was a very private person who didn't talk too much about himself. He got married for a third time to Patricia Tiernan in 1969, and Patricia would stay with him until his death in 1973. Sadly, Wally Cox died in his sleep of a heart attack at the age of 48. Wally's death devastated Marlon Brando, who apparently, after giving Wally's ashes to scatter, kept them instead and was known to carry on conversations with them. In the years that followed, Brando made a practice of keeping Cox's remains nearby, sometimes tucking the ashes in a drawer at his home on Mulholland Drive or under the front seat of his car. He did so against the wishes of Cox's widow, who said she considered suing Brando for selfishly keeping the ashes that he accepted under the guise of scattering them in the hills where Cox loved to hike. I've read a few rumors about Cox, one that he and Brando had a sexual relationship. Here's the thing, I can find no evidence to back this up, and more importantly, it's none of my business nor yours. If it was true when they wanted it to be known, they would have said something. Next, some people claim that Wally was an alcoholic. While it was true that Wally liked to drink, again I can find nothing to back up that this was a problem. There's a book called Brando Unzipped that makes all kinds of wild claims. Whatever, I read a bit of it and it seemed to be nothing but lurid and raunchy gossip. So I stopped reading it and used none of it for this biography. Unfortunately, many people take it as fact. I hope that Wally found peace in the end, that he found a balance between what he loved and his life as an actor. I know as time went on, he was tired of Mr. Peepers, and even when he died, he was still referred to by the character's name from a show he did just for a couple of years. I wish people would forget about Mr. Peepers, Cox said recently. Peepers was just one character I played. But to me, every time I hear him speak, I think Underdog. One last thing, apparently many people in the 70s didn't know how TV worked. Dear Dick, is Wally Cox dead? Somebody told me he was, yet I see him on Hollywood Squares. Mrs. Davis, Portsmouth, Ohio. Dear Dick, why in the world would they resurrect Wally Cox every Friday night? Why can't they let the poor man rest in peace? Helen Burnett, Caden, Alabama.